As I mentioned before in the air conditioner dryer video, I'm going to be putting my air box back on. I originally had a cool air induction on here. If you've watched some of the other videos, you've probably seen it. So the cool air induction, I started having trouble with it. It was having trouble because the shield that was in here was not keeping enough of the heat from the engine out. So it was getting a lot of hot air right here in where the air box would normally be, due to that shield not really closing everything off well enough to keep that air out. So because of that, the cool air induction was technically a hot air induction, which is not good for your engine. So to get this straightened back out, I'm simply going to go back to my factory box, which is 4 pieces overall. Your upper plate that clamps down on top of this, and then you have the filter itself, and you got your lower box, which has pins and clips for holding that together, as well as a few bolt points, or 1 bolt point for that matter. And you've also got this air duct. So this air duct goes into the side of the car. There's an opening over here. So as you can see there, that opening. So you want to take your air duct in this angle here, and it's going to run into this opening. Just like that. And it's going to sit there. That's going to allow it to snap right back into this opening here. So before we can do that, we need to make sure our wire is out of the way and our plate is good. We've got a lower plate here which has 2 rubber bushings in it. That's for these 2 pins on the bottom of the box to line up in. And then we have our hole on the tongue over here that's going to rest right in on this. So I need to go ahead and get this off. That's a washer with the knuckle on it, and then another just plain flat washer here. So this piece here that has the nut that's going to hold the upper section of the box in place, this wiggles around, as you can see. A lot of these, when they get older, this rubber will start giving and it's going to tear and just not even hold anymore. As you see, it's super soft. So there is no metal going down through the middle of this. It's simply a large metal plate with a threaded section on it on either end. And one end screws right into the car, and that's a 21mm wrench that fits on that. Whatever you do, do not try to tighten it at the top to tighten the bottom, because if you do, you're going to twist like this, and eventually you're just going to twist it right off. So be sure and hold down here when you're tightening at the bottom to the car, and then you're also going to want to kind of hold this in place when you tighten the nut and everything on top once you have the box in place. That way you don't accidentally twist that off. It's a little tougher once the box is down in place, but it can be done. So we want to make sure that our wire is out and underneath like this, so it's not rubbing on anything or getting in anything too hot. And we're going to simply lift our intake there a little bit to allow this box to get down in here. And you're probably going to have to use your hands to kind of feel to guide your box back into place. Now that those are popped down, you can guide it right over this stud. You can take your washer here that has the lobe on it, because that lobe is going to keep you from cranking down too hard onto that plastic bushing that we were talking about just a minute ago. And that's going to go down on there. And you got your other washer that goes right on top, and your flanged 10mm nut right on top of that. We get that tightened down with our hand just to hold it in place so it doesn't move around. Like I said, you can kind of reach back off in here and you can feel that the pins on the box popped in where they should. So now we can take our air tunnel and guide it back in to our box. Fortunately, it looks like I had my pull in the wrong way. So So I'm popping the air tube that goes on the side of the car on first. Then I'm lining up my pins. And give them a little push. And get our threaded stud in there, and there we go. Tube goes in. It's locked in place now. So you're going to be pulling air from a better location than I was before. You can also see that route through this wheel well port too. It's kind of hard to see. I don't have a whole lot of light in there. But the tube actually comes out right up here. So you can see it there as well if you're wanting to try to guide it. If you're having trouble, you can pop that panel off and then you can get in there with your other hand and kind of move it around however you need. That'll help you get it lined up and popped into the air box. So once we got the air box on, we run our flanged washer onto the box, and then our flat washer, and then our flange nut. Get that hand tight right now. So at this point, the box is in. We've got our air duct in the right position. It's going to be pulling air from outside the engine bay, so it'll help keep it from getting too much hot air pulled into the engine. Now that the box is in, we can move on to the filter, which depending on what kind of filter you go with, they're going to look different, of course. The factory one is typically just kind of a white kind of cloth filter. I've gone with the K&N. It's a little thinner than the factory. You also, if you go with the K&N filter, you will have to, on the upper side of the box, put in a seal, because they don't do such a thick rubber seal here. Don't know why they decided to do that. If they just found that it fits multiple designs of cars, if they do it that way, and then just add the extra pad for the ones that need it. I'm not sure. But anyhow, you put that seal inside your box lid, and that helps create the airtight seal for the new filter. So you do have, there's no hole here, even though you can see there's a little dot, but there is no hole here. But we do have 3 steel flanged washer ports that are actually going to mount onto the mass airflow meter and hold that in place once we get it popped into the groove. Just make sure the port is clean and your rubber seal is clean. And you're going to slide this right on all the way up to the mass airflow meter. And then you're going to run your 3 bolts in to hold that in place. So the bolts that hold that in place are, once again, small flanged 8mm bolts. And as I said, you've got 1 on this side and 2 on the other side. I'm going to go ahead and get those started. And you may have to take your vent pipe out to get to this. Do be careful, that is kind of a thin plastic and it can be broken quite easily. I'm actually going to go ahead and undo mine. It has 2 squeeze points, 1 on either side, and just wiggle it loose. And there we go. Do be careful with it. That old plastic just doesn't last very long inside all this heat. And whatever you do, don't drop a bolt down that hole. You can put a rag in there if you're concerned. I'm not going to do it this time. I'm pretty confident I'm not going to drop anything down there. That being said, now I'll probably drop something down there. Having that pipe loose gave me a lot more flexibility here, make it a lot easier to get my hands in there. Now these here, they won't need to be very tight. Unfortunately, I do not have the torque spec on this. Just snug them down pretty good. Don't get crazy with it. A couple 3 Newton meters should be all you need. There we go. Be careful what you're doing when you're tightening these down. Do not get too aggressive with it without supporting it. So don't get too rough with this, because you bend it too much, you can wind up splitting this boot, especially if that plastic's getting a little crunchy. So I mentioned before, you're going to hold this with a 21mm wrench. As you tighten down, this bushing. As I said, it's not particularly easy to get onto it once it's in here, but you can get onto it. There we go. Once again, just a couple Newton meters here. And there we go. Didn't tear up our rubber. At this point, we're able to twist this around if need be. We may have to loosen this off, it looks like. So I'm going to back this clamp off a little bit to give us a little movement here so we can twist this around how we need to. Once we have it twisted where we want, make sure our clamps are out of the way. We do have 3 clamps across the top and 1 clamp at the bottom. So 1 clamp down towards the bottom of the front, 1 clamp towards the back bottom corner close to the engine, and then the 3 across the top. Get that down on there. Simply get the hook over and then push the other side down. It snaps it in place. Creates that tight seal against that rubber seal. And same thing on the back, on the front bottom. Kind of have to do that one by feel a lot. Once you have it, you're good. And the same thing on our back one. You kind of have to go in this back side here. This is the tough one. There we go. You may even be able to get like a long screwdriver to help push that down once you get it locked in place. At this point, our boot and everything is in the right place. We're going to snap our vent hose back on. And take our connector, snap it back in place for our mass airflow meter. A little closer image of the quit snaps on this box. This is what should be on your box. These are metal hooks and they catch on that lip there. You just simply push it down until it snaps. And there's that tube all nice and neat into the airbox. And here's your mass airflow connector and your clamp. Be sure to tighten that back up. And we're back in business. That'll keep us from getting that hot air back into our intake